In this section, we'll examine cutaneous glands and then take a look into some skin disorders. The skin has 5 types of glands. There are miracrine sweat glands, apocrine sweat glands, sebaceous glands, ceruminous glands, and mammary glands. In Chapter 5, we looked at the structure of some of these glands. Now let's look at their secretions. There are 2 kinds of sweat glands, or sudoriferous glands. There are miracrine glands and apocrine sweat glands. As we learned in the last chapter, both of them have miracrine secretion. That is, that they release their contents by exocytosis into the ducts. The miracrine sweat glands are the most numerous skin glands. There are 3 to 4 million in the adult skin. They're simple tubular glands, and they have a watery perspiration that's used to help cool the body. The myoepithelial cells contract in response to stimulations from the sympathetic nervous system, and they'll squeeze perspiration up the duct, and thus we sweat. We produce about 500 milliliters of insensible perspiration. So water that passes across sweat that passes across our skin without us even noticing it. When we actually can notice our sweat, that's called diaphoresis. It usually happens in conditions of excess heat. In this situation, people may lose up to 1,000 milliliters an hour in order to achieve cooling. Apocrine sweat glands occur in the groin, anal region, the axilla, around the areola, and in the bearded areas of mature males. The ducts lead into nearby hair follicles. They produce a much thicker, milkier sweat that contains a lot of fatty acids. The apocrine sweat glands are scent glands, and they respond to stress and sexual stimulation. They don't develop until puberty, and they apparently correspond to the scent glands that develop in other mammals. In women, they enlarge and shrink with the phases of the menstrual cycle. Apocrine sweat glands themselves don't have a disagreeable odor. It's actually considered to be attractive or arousing in some cultures. It's more of a musky smell. However, when this stuff gets locked up in clothes and bacteria brew, they'll produce free fatty acids that have quite a rancid odor. This disagreeable body odor is called bromhidrosis. The apocrine sweat glands produce pheromones. These are chemicals that influence the physiology and behavior of other members of the species. They're often used in sexual matchmaking. In our society today, we use so many perfumes and such to hide our natural apocrine scents, as well as oral birth controls, that our pheromone secretions are completely disrupted or not perceived. Sweat begins as a protein-free filtrate in the blood. It's produced by plasma in the deep secretory portion of the gland. Contains potassium ions, urea, lactic acid, ammonia, some sodium chloride. Most of the sodium chloride's reabsorbed by the duct, however, in order to preserve salts. Some drugs are also excreted in the sweat. On average, sweat, though, is 99% water. It has a pH range of about 4 to 6, which contributes to the acid mantle and inhibits bacterial growth. Sebaceous glands produce an oily secretion. These glands are flask-shaped with very short ducts that open into the hair follicle. They're a halocrine gland, so their secretion consists of broken down cells, which are replaced by mitosis that happens at the base of the gland. These glands keep the skin and hair from becoming dry, brittle, and cracked. We spend a lot of effort trying to get these sebaceous secretions off of our faces, only to replace them with other moisturizers and such, most of which contain lanolin, which is sheep sebum. Ceruminous glands are found only in the external ear. Their secretion combines with sebum and dead epithelial cells to form earwax or cerumen. These keep the eardrum pliable, and it waterproofs the canal, also kills bacteria. It makes the guard hairs of the ear sticky to help them block foreign particles from entering the auditory canal. These glands are simple, coiled, tubular glands with ducts that lead to the skin surface and secrete the Saruman. Mammary glands are found in the breasts of both sexes. They contain very little glandular material. They're the milk-producing glands that develop only during pregnancy and lactation. They're a modified apocrine sweat gland, although their secretion is much richer and it's released by ducts that open into the nipple. Male mammary glands can be stimulated to produce milk under dire situation, but this isn't normal. The mammary ridges or milk lines are 2 rows of mammary glands in most mammals. In primates, we kept only the anterior-most glands. However, in some individuals, we'll see a 3rd or 4th nipple that are remnants of these ancestral milk lines. This condition of having additional nipples is called polythelia. So now we'll look at some skin disorders, including skin cancer and some burns. Skin cancer is induced by ultraviolet rays of the sun. It's most often found in the head and the neck, and more common in fair-skinned people and the elderly than anyone else. It's one of the most common cancers and one of the easiest to treat. It has one of the highest survival rates if it's detected and treated early, so it's very important to have your skin cancer screenings done. There are 3 types of skin cancer. They're named for the epidermal cells in which they originate. There's basal cell carcinoma, there's squamous cell carcinoma, and then malignant melanoma. And basal cell carcinoma is the most common type of cancer. Basal cell carcinoma is the most common type of skin cancer. It's the least dangerous because it seldom metastasizes. That means it doesn't really spread anywhere else. It forms from cells of the stratum basal. The lesion is usually a small, shiny bump with a central depression and beaded edges, such as the one you see here. Squamous cell carcinoma arises in the keratinocytes in the stratum spinosum. Its lesions usually appear on the scalp, ears, and lower lip, or on the back of the hand. They have raised and reddened scaly appearance. They later form a concave ulcer. The chances of recovery from this type of skin cancer are really good with early detection. We've got to have surgical removal. It tends to metastasize to the lymph nodes and can become lethal if untreated. Malignant melanoma is the worst kind of skin cancer. It arises in the melanocytes, often found in a pre-existing mole. It accounts for less than 5% of skin cancers, and it can be treated surgically if it's caught early. But it metastasizes rapidly and is unresponsive to chemotherapy, thus it's usually fatal. A person with metastatic melanoma lives usually only about 6 months from diagnosis. About 5 to 14% survive 5 years. Its greatest risk factor is having a family history of malignant melanoma. There's a very high incidence in men, redheads, and people who have experienced severe sunburn as a child. If you have any moles that have started to look weird, definitely get them checked out. There are a multitude of different types of sunscreens. UVA and UVB are fairly improperly called tanning and burning rays. Both, though, are thought to initiate skin cancer. Sunscreens are going to protect you from sunburn, but we're unsure if they provide protection against cancer or whether many of them cause cancer themselves. The chemicals in sunscreen damage the DNA and generate harmful free radicals. This is a topic that it would be great to take on as a final presentation. Not only are there carcinogenic chemicals in many of our sunscreens, but they've also been found to have estrogenic properties. So you think about it. We're slathering sunscreen all over our children. Do you think this has anything to do with changes in fertility rates? Really good questions. This is the kind of stuff I love to see in final presentations. There's lots of information out there for this topic. Burns are the leading cause of accidental death. We see them from fires, from kitchen spills, from sun, from ionizing radiation, strong acid or base burns, or electrical shock. Death results primarily from fluid loss and infection, or the toxic effects of eschar, which is burned dead tissue. Debridement is the removal of eschar. It's a very painful process. Burns are classified according to the depth of the tissue involvement. First-degree burns, or partial thickness burns, involve only the epidermis. It's marked by redness, maybe a slight edema, and some pain, but they usually heal within a few days. Most sunburns are first-degree burns. You can see here the first-degree burn effect, just going into the layer of the epidermis. A second-degree burn is also a partial thickness burn. It involves the epidermis and part of the dermis. However, part of the dermis is still left intact. These can be red, tan, or white in appearance. Usually it takes 2 weeks or several months to heal, and it may leave scars. A sign of a second-degree burn is blistering, and they're very painful. Third-degree burns are full-thickness burns. This means the epidermis and all of the dermis, and often some of the deeper tissues into the muscles or bone, are destroyed. Most often, third-degree burns will require skin grafts. Definitely, they'll require fluid replacement and infection control. Here's an example of the third-degree burn, all the way through to tissues beneath the dermis. Skin grafts are fairly readily available these days. You can have an autograft, which is skin that's taken from another location on your same person's body, or an isograft, skin from an identical twin. A split skin graft is when we take epidermis and part of the dermis from an undamaged area such as the thigh or buttocks and graft it into the burned area. Usually, it will grow quite happily there. There are some temporary grafts. They're temporary because the immune system has rejected them. It's a homograft or allograft, which is from an unrelated person, and a heterograft or xenograft from even another species. There's a lot of work going on right now in producing artificial skins from things like silicone and collagen. And with the advent of stem cell technologies, there's also a lot of research going on with production of skin in the lab. So it would be an autograft, however, not taken from your body anywhere, just grown in a lab. This, again, would be a great topic for the end of the semester. So now we're at the end of our chapter on the integument. Go ahead and be sure to complete all of the rest of the activities for the chapter. Check out your Anatomy and Physiology Revealed, do your Connect Learn Smart module, and explore any additional materials, especially the drag and drop art. Just a hint.